Hello folks, Jerry here and welcome to today's video where I wanted to talk about some of the cars that I really want to see in Auto Legends for one reason or another. Now obviously there have been a couple of cars that have already been announced, like the Supra and the R34 Skyline, but of course there's also going to be a bunch of cars in the game that haven't been announced yet. I mean, couldn't you imagine Auto Legends not having like a Mustang inside of it? Anyways, some of these cars are probably not gonna make it. I mean, for some I can actually say with 100% certainty you will not see them in Auto Legends, but it would be really cool if they made it. Anyways, I wanted to start off the list with a bunch of cars that I have owned in real life and therefore I really want to see in the game, and the car that I want to see the most in Auto Legends is this, the Hyundai Ton. This was my first car and I absolutely love this thing. Now obviously it's a more of a budget car, it's not really expensive these days, so I think it would really serve its purpose as like a starter car in the game. I think it looks absolutely amazing. You could do a lot of mods with it, and this thing, I mean, honestly, this might be my favorite car that I have ever owned just because I had that deep connection with it being my first car. So obviously I'm really gonna root for it to make it into Auto Legends. Now, the car that I have replaced the Tiburon with is very likely not going to make it, and it's a car you guys have probably never even heard of. It's my lemon, the Citroen DS3, which, oddly enough, it was actually a really good car to own. Now, it was very quirky, it even had like a perfume holder, and it wasn't the most reliable, but this thing, it definitely has a very unique appeal to it, I would say. It looks quirky, and I think that a lot of people would actually be very excited seeing some of this, you know, Citroens in the game, even though, as of right now, there have basically been no confirmed French cars into Auto Legends, and I'm really not sure if any will make it, but if they do, who knows, maybe this thing's gonna be on the list. And this is not the only French car that I have in this list, but let's move on to the car that I currently own, which is this, the Ford Fiesta ST. Now this was my attainable dream car for a long time, and you know, I drove a regular Ford Fiesta for work when I was delivering food a few years ago, and I absolutely fell in love with it, and obviously that really made me want to get the Fiesta ST, and this thing is just amazing. Now, a couple of years ago, this thing would probably be a really good bet to make it into the game, because, I mean, even on CSR Racing 2, the Ford Fiesta ST was one of the starter cars, but now the odds I don't think are as amazing as they would be in like 2016. But who knows, I think this one has a realistic shot to make it into the game, and seeing how I drive this car every day in real life, it would just be sick to own it in Auto Legends as well. And now let's get on with the list of the cars that, well, obviously I didn't own, starting off with the Alfa Romeo RBAR. Now, I think this is one of the most beautiful cars ever made, and I almost bought one, which is the reason why I have sort of a connection with it. But if there were any like Italian cars, I really feel like Alfa Romeo would be one of the brands to go with, along with like, you know, Ferrari and Lamborghini. But we'll have to see. I mean, the next car that I have here is also from Alfa Romeo, and it's a car that I think will probably see it in the game, and it's the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio GTA in this instance. I mean, the normal Quadrifoglio is also an amazing car, but I think that the GTA is just so sick. Like, all the aero parts and the whole design, this thing is just beautiful. And I would love to own this thing in real life and in Auto Legends as well, which is probably more likely. Now, I think that the Quadrifoglio, the regular one, is probably going to be in the game. I mean, I think the developers really want to have that, you know, wide appeal of cars, and I think the Quadrifoglio would really fit that, but who knows, maybe the GTA could be like a special edition car for certain events, but obviously we're gonna have to wait and see about that. Now, the next car on this list, I think, is my ultimate dream car that I really want to own one day, and that would be the old Aston Martin DBS. And wow, I really could not find a better resolution picture for this thing, but I think this is the most beautiful car ever made. I do have to say it would be really funny to see like a riced out version of the Aston Martin DBS in the game, but Look, I don't think if this thing's actually gonna make it, just because I'm not sure how it would fit like the whole drag racing world, but we have seen this car in plenty of other racing games, so maybe it's gonna make it along with like some of the newer Astons, but it would be really cool to see this thing in the game, even though I don't know, I don't think it's the most likely Aston Martin to actually make it into the game, but you know, we'll have to wait and see. It would be really cool if it did though. Next up, the BMW M6. This thing, look, I know the styling is controversial, but I think this might be the most beautiful BMW ever made, in my opinion. I just think it looks so sleek, the whole coupe body, and I actually really like the back end as well, which not many people seem to do, but who knows. If the developers, you know, take a really wide variety of cars into consideration, then I do think this one is plausible, but like I said, we're gonna have to wait and see. But I think this thing would really fit a niche, and it would get a lot of people really excited, because this car being in the game means that a lot of other cool cars will make it as well. I mean, you also have the E60 BMW M5 that would probably make it into the game if this one did, and I really think people would love it. Next up, probably quite an odd choice, and it is the Fiat Coupe. Now, look, I actually really wanted this for my first car, but obviously they are quite old these days. I mean, they're from like late 90s and early 2000s, and I know that the styling is very controversial, but I always loved seeing these on the road. I think they are very unique, and I do think that they would fit like the starter car aesthetic of the game really well. I mean, what you want in Auto Legends is the most variety you can possibly have in a racing game, so we have seen this car in a couple of other games. I mean, you know, Juiced and games like that had it, but seeing how it's 2023 now and it's gonna be 2024 when the game actually releases, I don't think the odds are that amazing, but it's definitely not the lowest odds of a car making it on the game in this list. Next up, a car which is probably quite unlikely, the Ford Cougar, or the Mercury Cougar as it's known in the US. This was another car which I really wanted for my first car. I just think it's really quirky. I do like the design a lot, but with this car, I think the odds are perhaps a bit better as you would expect, because as we know, the Ford Probe is already confirmed to be in the game. We have already seen screenshots of that, and seeing how this is the replacement for the Ford Probe, who knows, maybe it's actually gonna make it. I do think it was like relatively popular with the modding community back in the day, so it would be really cool if this car made it. But this next thing, if this next car makes it into the game, I'm gonna be so excited about it, and it is probably the lesser known Mitsubishi, well, definitely the lesser known Mitsubishi, but it's this, the Mitsubishi FTO. Every time I see this car in a racing game, I am just so excited to see it. I think this is one of the quirkiest cars, or like the quirkiest, one of the coolest cars of all time. And I think the only reason why it's not as popular as you know, cars like the Eclipse is because it was only made for the Japanese market, and then they ported a few into the UK back in the day. But you really do not see this car a whole lot. I really like, honestly, one of my life goals is to see a Mitsubishi FTO in person. That's how much I love this thing. And who knows, perhaps I'm gonna own it one day. There's like 3 in the whole continent of Europe, so we're gonna have to see about that. Still though, I think this car has a lot of potential for modifying, and if the developers really want to focus on the lower end stuff, this is one of the cars that I think would excite a whole lot of people. Next up, a car which is probably not gonna make it, and it's this, the Opel/Vauxhall Calibra. Like, this is another one of those coupes that you would see a lot on the roads back in the day. Well, not in the US, but over here we do have a couple, even though they have really thinned out over the years. But yeah, this is really, I think, the pattern for this list. It's basically older, cheaper coupes. It's the type of car that is my favorite and excites me the most, so obviously I would love to have a Caliber in the game. I do think it does fit the whole aesthetic of the game. I mean, especially that picture from the back, you know, stands a little bit. I think it would really go along with the Ford Probe that is in the game, but it's obviously not a brand that the developers will be focusing on heavily, so who knows. Maybe, but I think that this is one of the cars that will probably not end up being in the game. Next up, a car which I can say with basically 100% guarantee is not going to be in the game, even though it would be really cool if it was, the Renault Laguna Coupe. Now, the reason why I put this car on the list is because obviously I want some of the quirkier cars on this list, but this thing, I think it looks absolutely stunning, especially in real life. Like, this is a car that you Americans have probably never heard of, but fuck, this thing looks sick, and it does actually have some presence. It did come with a V6, which was relatively powerful for the European market, but like I said, we don't even know if there's gonna be any French cars in Auto Legends at this point, but even if they are, I think the Laguna Coupe is a car that we will probably not see in the game. I mean, it doesn't have like a lot of mods supported for it, but who knows, perhaps it maybe releases in Auto Legends. Highly unlikely though. The next cars that I want to talk about is not any specific car, but basically just any Australian Ford. I love these things. I love the TS50 and I love the FPV, and I think the odds of at least the FPV getting in the game are relatively high, because we did see a Ford FPV make it into Racing Rivals a couple of years ago. And I just love the Falcons, the TS50, the FPVs. Any of these cars make it into the game and I'm gonna be extremely happy about it. Next up, another cheap coupe from the 90s, and it's of course the Volkswagen Curado. I think this thing actually would fit the aesthetic of the game really well, and we already know that the Golf 4 R32 is going to be in the game, so who knows, perhaps this would be another lower tier car that would really get the people going. Another car which is probably going to be in the game ultimately is this, the Lexus IS300 or the Altezza. Look, I fell in love with this car when I saw it in Need for Speed Most Wanted. It just excites me. It's another one of these staples of, you know, car customization, especially back in the 2000s, and I think it would fit the aesthetic of the game really well. Now, we haven't seen a lot of supercars, but let's go ahead and change that. So we have a duo here, the Seline S7 and the Seline Mustang. Like, I think the Seline S7 is probably going to make it into the game. I think it's one of the most iconic cars of its decade, and I think it looks absolutely stunning, and considering the game is going to be, you know, like US themed, I do think the odds of the Seline S7 getting into the game are relatively good. I don't think the Mustang is going to make it, but seeing how this is probably my favorite American car ever made, I would absolutely love to see it in the game. Probably not though. Next up, a car which would probably be in the game if it was 2011, the BMW 1M. I actually saw one of these in real life, like parked up on the street a couple of months ago, and I went crazy. This is a car that is extremely rare these days, but I feel like it's really desirable, and the whole design of it and just how it differentiates itself from the regular 1 Series is just absolutely stunning, and I want this thing in the game. And finally, the Infiniti G35. Now this thing, from what I've heard, is really a staple in car meets in the US, not for all the right reasons, but I think it would fit the whole aesthetic of the game. Obviously, it's very popular in the US, so I do think it probably will make it into the game. So basically, that was my list of some of the cars that I really want to see in Auto Legends. If I had to pick one car from this entire list to make it into the game, it would be the Hyundai Tiburon. Anyways, what do you guys want to see in the game? You are very welcome to make your own list in the comment section, and who knows, perhaps the developers are gonna see it and are gonna be like, okay, a lot of people want this car in the game, let's do it. So anyways, my name is Jerry, thank you guys for watching this video, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Take care.